Chapter 19. Guarding the Family. Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 18. Neither shalt thou commit adultery. Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 18. Adultery in the Bible means not only sexual infidelity by a married person, but includes also the sexual faithfulness of a betrothed person. Deuteronomy chapter 22, verses 23 to 24. The death penalty applies in the biblical law, Deuteronomy chapter 22, verses 20 to 25, because the basic institution being the family, adultery is treason in a familistic society. Our world is statist, and treason is now unfaithfulness to the state. Adultery, like all sin, is a double offence against a man or a woman, the marital partner and the families involved, and against God, whose law is transgressed. Even in societies like our humanistic one, where adultery is sometimes seen as pleasure in variety rather than as sin, adultery has serious consequences. A high percentage of married men today are not certain who fathered the family's children. This uncertainty has vast social consequences. Adulterous women know that such an uncertainty has commonly an unsettling and even devastating effect on their husbands. It limits their future orientation. Why work to build up an estate, a business or a farm for a son perhaps fathered by someone else? What happens then to a father's headship and authority? The sexual revolution was an aspect of a present-oriented culture, and it furthered that culture. Renaissance literature shows that the mockery of other men as cuckolds was an evil and commonplace fact, and a devastating one. Suspicion, introduced in so basic a relationship as marriage, has long-term consequences. Among other things, true marriage is a religious fact as well as an intensely personal alliance. We now see it as a bond between two people, a man and a woman. The Bible underscores the fact that a new unit is created by marriage. Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. Genesis chapter 2, verse 24. This new unit is, however, in continuity with the old, for marriage is the basic community, after that the larger family, and, with some, the clan. In Ruth's statement, we see this greater dimension. And Ruth said, Entreat me not to leave thee, or to return from following after thee, for whither thou goest, I will go, and where thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God, my God. Where thou diest, will I die, and there will I be buried. Lord, do so to me, and more also, if aught but death part thee and me. Ruth chapter 1, verses 16 and 17. Ruth, a widow, makes this statement to her mother-in-law. By her marriage, Ruth has changed her faith and her loyalties, and for her there was no retreat. A community always has a centre of power and life. In a familistic society, that centre is the man, the husband, and in association with him as vice-regent, the wife. It is not an accident that men tend to be authoritarian. They were created to be the human centres of culture. In the modern world, humanism has shifted the power centre from the family and the meal to the state. The modern state is the power centre, and it is intensely hostile to any other claimant to centrality, such as the church, but most of all hostile to the family. Controls in the family have as their purpose the chaining of the main rival to statist power, One of the consequences of the triumph of statism is, first, limitations on women. The Enlightenments and the so-called Age of Reason severely limited a woman's powers over herself and her property. Second, because this restricted woman unduly, a consequence of this was the rise of feminism. Women gravitate to power, whether as groupies ready to become the sexual playthings of media-created male celebrities, or as persons to whom the real world is no longer the family, but the political order. Politics becomes feminized. A major political emotion becomes pity for every group singled out by politics for attention. The power center of humanistic women becomes the state. For some, it is state-sponsored and state-promoted cultural activities. For such women, the power center is emphatically not their husbands nor families, no matter how great their affections for them. This is why W.B. Yeats's words are so telling. In the modern world, the center does not hold because it is a false center. The result is an eccentric or off-center society. Children then, too, are off-center and accordingly become problems or are derelict. Where men are power centers as heads of families, wives are also of great importance. John Adams was a man still close to the Puritan world. Howe, the British Viscount and General, proved to be alternately good and bad. Adams remarked, "A smart wife would have put Howe in possession of Philadelphia a long time ago." To many, Adams's comments makes no sense, but to Adams, who knew men as power centers whose wives are powerful aids, the meaning was clear. Modern women are turning to the state and its culture vultures to be near to the new centers of power. To detach power in society from the family is very dangerous. Man being a sinner, the abuses of power in families are real. In non-Christian cultures, they are endemic. It must be recognized that, despite abuses, the family is not simply a power center. It is a family, an intensely personal group, and the ties are those of blood and love, among other things. Very often, too, the power is a shared power. The family members of an important man gain in personal importance and privilege. The power exercised is personal and familial, not impersonal and statist. Every social order is a system of power relations, and the more impersonal the power center, the less personal the consideration given to individuals. Statist power is the cold ability to dominate, control and coerce people and to compel their conduct. In the family, faith and loyalty are strong compelling forces, whereas in the state it is the monopoly of legal power. The family's authority and power is a moral force when faithfully exercised. The state, which is the power center, has military and police power in its hands. It seeks not a moral compliance, but a brute force organization of society. Even sociologist Ray E. Baber summarized the defining fact of the family thus: "It is the basic social institution." Since Baber wrote this in 1944, a statist revolution has triumphed, and the family is a major target of attack. A Roman work by Athenacus, written between AD 230 and 250, is revealing as to what happens when the state replaces the family as the power center. Athenacus held, as C.C. Zimmerman summarizes it, that people had complete confidence in the power of sex to integrate the family and social system of that time and to ensure the continuity of each. The people were then ready to believe that this had always been true, and every public character of the past is made out to be, whenever possible, a homosexual, to have had a mistress, and to have occasionally fathered illegitimate children. It reinforces the idea that women should sustain and feed the love of the husbands by out-Venusing Venus. It shows a sex life panorama as adequate, if not more so, as the most sophisticated writings on sex today. This primary emphasis on sexuality serves to erode the family. It gives a priority to anarchistic conduct, which undermines the family, and it thereby furthers the state's claim to be the power centre. So-called sexual freedom becomes an asset to the power state by helping to break down the family. A final note. The inability of many scholars to understand the family as it once was appears in the work of an archaeologist, Eberhard Zanger, in The Flood from Heaven, 1992. Dr. Zanger sees the adultery which led to the Trojan War as a trifling incident, but, from the perspective of the time, Paris's adultery with Helen was an assault against the king and the realm, a grim fact that called for justice. 20th century man may regard adultery with the queen or anyone as a trifling matter, but it was then an open contempt for and an assault on Greek power. This was why so many great Greeks joined in the war. It was far from being a trifling matter. It treated them all as slave people whose women could be taken at will, beginning with the queen. It was war.